Okay, so today we're gonna start um, learning how to make an actual Spigot plugin. And so the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna get rid of all code we have so far and just start with this main class. Then we're gonna go into our build.gradle folder or file, and then go to whatever search engine you want and look up Spigot and then Gradle. And the one that leads you to Spigot website, it'll be called Spigot Maven Repository for Gradle. And you can just scroll down to here and copy that and paste it into your repository. And then if we go back, keep scrolling down, there's another one. We want, you can just copy both, but I'm pretty sure you only need one of them. And then the dependencies, we make sure to copy the first one. The second one, I might go over it later, but that requires a little bit more work to set up. Okay, so now we have all these. You can reload your Gradle project, so there should be something up here. It looked like an elephant with a little circle of arrows. Reload the project. Maybe do, yeah, just maybe, hmm. Well, maybe, that's new. Um, okay. Huh. Okay. Alright, so this doesn't want to work. Um, so we'll try something else. So you can close this and go to your plugins and go make sure you're in Marketplace and look up Minecraft development right there. And then you can install that, restart, and now you can create a new project. And let's call it first Minecraft plugin, Gradle. But then you want to go down here and you'll see Minecraft. And then you'll select Spigot plugin, your Java version. If we're going for 1.19, you're probably going to want Java 17. So for your group ID, put how you would structure your packages. So I do this. You could put me dot your name or whatever. It's basically what your um, package structure sort of looks like, and then the name. So let's just call it first plugin. Go down and select Gradle. Doesn't really matter, but I prefer it, so I'm gonna pass that down onto you. Authors, you can put your name. For description, you can say my first Spigot plugin. And then I typically like to go into this main class name and get rid of the package that just has the first name. Just makes it look cleaner to me. So, but you guys don't have to. Minecraft version, we want 1.19. We hit next, and then we name the project. So first plugin. Oh, great. See if it wants to load. And if something pops up asking if you want to load the Gradle project scripts, say load them. And it yep, looks like it's working. So now this is how you set up your plugin. So if we go to the file structure, you'll see we just got this one class, but it extends a Java plugin. So we went over extending and whatnot yesterday. But basically, when the server starts, the code that's within this on enable method runs, and when the server shuts down, the on disable gets called. So you can do pretty much anything with Spigot from here. So there's also a couple of other methods that you can override with this Java plugin. You can just use start typing at override, and you'll see override / implement methods. You can click on that, and you'll see all the different things that you can override. I'm gonna take a wild guess and say that this on load is the second most common, one of the most common things that you might override. This gets run when your plugin loads. So this basically, when the server starts, it'll first try and enable all your plugins, and then it will load your plugin, or No, it'll load your plugins and then it will enable them. And you can sort of see that. Um, so if we're, I guess if we're gonna look at it from a, um, this gets called first, then it would get this called, and then this. But we don't want to deal with that, so we can just get rid of it. So, um, the next thing is events. Now, the way events work is, um, your the class you're working with has to um, implement a listener, like an event listener, and you can do this in your main plugin class, but it can you don't want to put too much in your classes, so we're gonna create a new class, and we're just gonna call this plugin listener. And it will implement the listener. Now, you may notice that there's multiple different listener classes. You want the one that has org.bucket.event. So you can just, double click that or hit enter. Then, let's say we want to listen for when a player, we want to know when a player joins. So that we can say something, so that we can broadcast something to the entire server. So how we do that is you use that at symbol, but instead of override, you use event handler, and then you put your function. So public void, and you can name it whatever, but just name it what you're listening for. So on join. So we're listening for when the player joins, and in here you need an event because it will pass in an event as a function or as a variable into the function. So you can go here. We can go to the Spigot website. If we just go, so there's this thing called a Java docs, and that's basically it shows you what all the methods and all the classes and how to call all the functions and whatnot that a library has, and Spigot has a pretty good one. So if you just look up Spigot Java doc, and you'll come up with the Java docs, and what we can do, we can go into here. You'll see org.bucket.event. That's like the parent folder for all the events that we can listen for. But you also see that there's a .block, .enchantment. So that's basically they sort of grouped each event to make it a little bit more organized. And since we're trying to listen for a player join event, it's going to be in our player. And so now we can look at here, so we can listen for all of these events. So we could listen for an animation event, a bed enter, bed leave, changing the world, whenever they chat or talk. Actually, this one is now an async player chat event. So one of the things you want to look for is depreciated. That basically means you're not supposed to use that anymore, like that method or that class anymore. And usually they'll provide an alternative. So right here, player bucket fish event, that's been replaced by bucket entity event. So instead of using this, you'd use this. So, but the one we're looking for is player join event. It's called when a player joins a server. So now we can go back to our code and player join event, and then we'll just call it event. So now this function is going to be called whenever a player joins a server. And let's say we just want to broadcast to the entire server that, whoever joined the server. So how we can do that is um, there is a class that you'll use a lot, and it's called bucket, and it has a whole bunch of functions that you can use right out. So static functions. So this is how you can call a static function: is you just put the name of the class, and then you can call static functions. But in order to call non-static functions, you have to have an instance of the class. Um, yeah. So we can use this bucket class to do all sorts of things. So we can ban people with it. There's the broadcast, so that's what we're going to use, but we could also, create different types of recipes, create an inventory, um, you can create a map, a world, you can get all the online players, you can get all the banned players, you can get what version of Minecraft you're on. You can get pretty much most things that you need to do in this for the server. So what we want is broadcast message, and we could just put, you know, um, well, let's say we want to put you know, the player's name has joined this server. So how we can do that is this event class, this event variable that gets passed in contains some data, and we can look at that event dot. So we can get the join message and set the join message. So actually, yeah, we might use that, but we can usually, yeah, you can get the player, you can get whether it's asynchronous, which means it's which is something we'll get into later. Um, but let's just get the player, the name, and then so now that we have the player, there's a few functions that you can use with the player. So we can get the display name, um, and but we could also get their IP address. We can get their uh, flying speed and their ping and how long they've played on the server. Um, all these things and everything that you can see that you can get with the player, you can also set. So you could also, so yeah, just scrolling through all these, you can see everything that you can get with with the player. If we keep scrolling down long enough, you'll see you can um, set things. So you can set their flying speed. You can set whether they're flying or whether they're not. You can set their scoreboard. You can set whether they're sneaking. Um, you can display particles. You can open up inventories and whatnot. But we just want to get the name. Uh, but we don't want to just get. Let's say we have another part of our plugin that gives them a nickname or something like that. So we don't want to just get the name of the player. We want to get their the name that people will see them as on the server. And how you can do that is you can hit the get display name, and then we can add has joined the server. Um, so this will work. Your player will join the server, and it will print and it will broadcast to the server this entire message. But we it's just gonna be displayed as normal white text. Like there's not gonna be any colors or anything like that. But let's say we want to add some colors. So how we can do that is there's two ways. The first way is it's a little bit more it's a little simpler ish depending on what you're doing, but let's say you have just this really long message and you only want it to be one color. This is when you're typically going to want to use this. And how you can what you do is you use you chat color and make sure you have the org.bucket, not netmd5 bungee. So you can use chat color and then dot, and then you'll see all the different colors that you can have. So or whether you want it to be strike through or underline or whatnot. Um, so let's say we want this text to be yellow. We can set it to yellow, and you can just add that to your function or add that to your string, just like that, and that'll make the text yellow. But let's say we want a little bit more color than just yellow. Let's say we want to make each word in this each word in this string a different color. If we did that with the chat color and adding them, it would get really long really fast. So how we can solve that is chat color dot translate alternate color codes. So the first argument that you have to pass into this is what you want the character to be. So when you're working with essentials, it's the and, but let's say you want to be different, you can make it whatever you want. You can make it a um, asterisk, but we'll just stick with and because that's what everyone's familiar with. And then you can put your string that you're trying to send as the second argument. So you separate them with a comma. And now you can just go through this. Now it will automatically translate all the color codes that start with an and to a color. And so, we could make this word gold or yellow, this one gold. We make this one black, and this one a nice, yeah, a darker green. So instead of having to write, all the chat color dot green and whatnot, you can just use these color codes to make colors. And it's important to note that also important to note that you can't do hex colors using this API. you have to use the other one, but it's a little bit more complicated and not something that I'm going to go over. You can look it up if you want. So now we have this basic plugin that will broadcast a message to the server. So now we can hit this um, run arrow, or this run play button sort of thing, and actually, wait, sorry. Now we have to register the listener. So now we have this plugin listener. It implements a listener, and it will listen for this player join event, and when it gets called, it'll run this code. And what we can do, what we have to do in order for that to actually be run, we have to sort of tell Spigot that it's a thing. So how we do that is you call bucket dot get plugin manager and then dot register events with an S. And yeah, make sure it's a register events with an S. And you might have seen you need a listener and a plugin. So the listener is this plugin listener class. So we can just create a new plugin listener. And the plugin, since the class that we're in extends Java plugin, which also it's a plugin, we can just use the this keyword because we're referring to this object. So now it's registering the bucket that is registering this event listener with bucket so that when we join the server, it will broadcast the message. And one other thing I should go over is if you don't use this though if you don't use this way of creating the um, project in IntelliJ, you're gonna have to create a plugin.yml file. You'll see that it's already been sort of filled out for us, but you're gonna have to sort of edit this in the future. But it's good to know what is in there. So these three things right here are absolutely essential for every plugin. Every plugin in their plugin.yml file has to have the name of the plugin, the version, and what this means is it's actually going to compile to the version that's in our build.gradle. So notice we have the version right here is 1.1. Here, let's just change that to 1.1. That'll mean this version is 1.1. So that's another nice thing. And then you need the main class. So you need the path from here, from this Java folder, you need the path down. So net the Mr. Geotech for me, but for you guys it might be me dot whatever, and then the plugin class, and then this has to be the class that extends Java plugin. Another thing that's not required but you usually want to have is your API version. So for this one we're using 1.19. So it's best to specify that. That way your Spigot can know that you're actually using 1.8 or 1.19 and that you're not using some older version of the API. You also probably want to include your author so that you make sure you got credit, and you can put a description if you want. And so now, yeah, we can hit the run first plugin. I'm actually gonna, oh, and one thing about this API version is only put the first two numbers. So only put the major release version. So if it's 1.18.2, if that's the, so if I was to go in here and put um 1.18.2 and reload. So now I'm using the 1.18.2 API. So the API version is 1.18, not 1.18.2. You don't include the minor release version, only the major release versions. So now you can hit this, and now what you need to do is go into this build folder. In it's it should be a little different color, maybe orange or whatnot. Um, Maybe it's green. I can't remember what the actual um, thing looks like. But the one here, I don't think you should see. Since we changed the version right here to 1.1, it'll have the name of the plugin, a dash, and then the version that you have right here. So if you have that snapshot at the end of it, it'll say 1.1 dash snapshot. But if you have the just 1.1, it'll be 1.1. You know, you could change it to 1.5 if you say it's your fifth release of the plugin, and it will compile to 1.5. But we're 1.1, can reload, compile. We don't want that. So it's in build libs and right here. So then what we can do is we want to copy that file. So we copy it, and now we go to your Minecraft server, whatever Minecraft server you set up before, and go to the plugins file, and you can paste the file. So now you can double click on your start.bat or whatever you have it named as, your starting file. One second. I have to start it a little bit differently because one second. That takes care of that. Yeah, make sure you start it and you have the console open, because if you don't have the console open, it's a pain in the butt to stop it from running. You have to go into your system monitor or whatever it's called, task manager on Windows, and you have to stop it. All right, so here we got, you can see we have first plugin is enabled. So you can see where this is, it says loading first plugin. That's where the on load would be called. And then it says enabling first plugin. That's where the on enable is called. So timing's reset. That's good. Now we can open up Minecraft. And we can run it. So once it starts, and make sure the version of Minecraft that you're running is the same as your server version. Um, so then you can go multiplayer and make sure you have local host as your server address, and you can add that. I already have that, actually twice apparently. So then you can join the server, and you'll see right there it broadcasts that I joined the server. So simple enough and works just fine. So you can, if you want, you can leave it open or not. Now you can just type stop into the console, stop the server. And once it says flushing IO, that pretty much means it's done. Yours will probably say something like press any key to continue or something. So now we can go back to our plugin. And now what we need to do is a command. Now, what if we want to make a command that uh, I don't know, we'll do something simple. It'll give the player an item. So what we can do is we can call this uh let's give it an egg, an the end dragon egg. So let's just call it end egg command. So you're creating a new class in the net and your package. It's called end egg command. You can create it, and then what you have to do is extends. Wait, no, it's implements command executor. So now what we can do is we can sort of hover over this. It'll say implement. It has to implement this command. Let's do implements method, and then sort of double click on that, and it'll create you this command or this function. And what happens is this function gets called when a command is run, and you can so in order to so I'll go over sort of how it will figure out what command is actually being run and what to call, but um, let's just assume it's the right command, and we're going to give the player that runs the command a dragon egg. So um, a couple things that we might want to do is, so there's technically three places where a command can be run. A player can run a command, the server console can run a command, and then a command block can run a command. And when we're trying to give a player an item or do something that only players can do, one of the things you have to do is make sure that only a player is running a command. And how we do this is an if statement. Is we need to check whether the player, whether this command sender is a player. And how we can do this is if sender is an instance of player. And basically what this means is player, the class player is a child. So um, player extends the command sender. So a command sender, you can think of it as the top, and a command sender can go down and be the console. It can be a player, or it can be a command block. Um, we want to make sure that this command sender is of type player, and we can use the instance of symbol to determine that. But this will determine whether they are a player. We want to determine whether they are not a player and then stop them. And what we can do is just encompass it in parentheses, and anything that's encompassed in parentheses is sort of like math. It'll get run first. So this thing that's in parentheses right here, sender instance of player, that'll get run. These parentheses will get run first, and if we put an exclamation mark right there, so if command sender instance of player not, so if they're not an instance of player, then the code here will be run. And let's just sender dot send message. So we're going to send them a message. I'm going to use chat color dot red because it's only going to be one color. It says only players can execute this command. And then we need to return, because we don't want any more code to be run, because we've already determined that it's not going to work. So we'll return, and we'll return true. See how this is a Boolean value? That basically is trying to determine whether the command was successfully run. And even though, it has to be a player, so the command wasn't technically successfully run because it didn't give anybody an item, it did successfully check that the player is an instance, or that the sender is an instance of is not an instance of a player, and it did send them a message. So for what we want it to do, the command actually executed correctly. So now we can go after this and write the code that actually will get run. You might also want to add another check. Let's say we only want players with a certain permission to be able to run the command. So what we can do is if sender dot has permission, and then we can put, I don't know, let's just put first plugin dot give egg. So if the player, or if the sender, which we've already checked to make sure is an instance of a player, if the sender does not have this permission, then this code in here will be run. And you might also notice that I didn't put parentheses around the sender that has permission. That's because it's seen as one statement. Here, if I get rid of the parentheses, Java doesn't really know whether I'm trying to not the sender or whether I'm trying to not the entire thing. Whereas here, there's no spaces or anything like that. So it's pretty clear that we want this code to be run first and then not it. So we can copy pretty much just the same code because we want it to just send them a message and tell them that they're not able to do it. So, sorry, but you do not have permission to execute this command. And it will return. So now we've made sure they have permission and we've made sure that they are in fact a player. The permission will also take into account if they're an OP or not, so an operator. Um, so we don't really need to check for that, but you could add it if you wanted to. Um, so now um, we get we need to get the instance of a player, and we know that the sender is an instance of a player. But right now, we still only see sender as a command sender. We don't see it as a player. And how we can get the actual player part so that we can have access to player command or to player functions um, is it's called casting. Um, so we create player. So we're creating a player variable, but we're gonna set it equal to the sender, but we can't really do that because it's setting a command sender equal to a player. And how we can actually make it so that, uh, but we've already checked and seen that command sender is a player. So if we put parentheses player, that's basically saying we want to get sender, which we know is a player, but it's we want to get that player part of it rather than the command sender part. So now we have access to a whole bunch of commands or functions, I guess, a whole bunch of functions that we didn't have access to before. So we can now player dot um we can give them an item, or we could have them change their flying speed or whatnot. Whereas when we had sender, all we could really do is send them a message, check if they have a permission, um, whatnot. But you can see all of these, they say on player. So these aren't actually methods of the command center sender. They're methods of the player. So now that we have the player, in order to give them an item, we first actually have to get the item. And items are called item stacks. So an item stack item equals new item stack. But there's a few things that we have to pass into the item stack. One of them is what kind of item, and you can you can get different types of items by doing material dot and then the type of item. So we want a dragon egg, dragon egg, right there. We can also set the amount of eggs that they get. So if we wanted to get them a whole stack, 64, we could do 1, we could do 3, any number. You can also do illegal amounts. But we only want to give them 1 because they're not that special. So then the next one is damage. That's more of if you got like a sword or a tool or something. There's a couple of other ones that there's a few that you can explore and look around and figure out what you can actually put in there, but this is all we need for now. And now we can player dot get the inventory of the player because we're not um because the way we can the player doesn't we have to get the player's inventory to put something inside of it. You can't just put an item inside of the player because technically the player doesn't have any spots for items. It's their inventory that has spots for items. So we get their inventory and then we can say add item and then we can just put item in there. And this will just add the item to the player's inventory and then let's just send a message saying player.send message. Check color dot lime. That's green. And that's the other thing is all the lighter colors are just their normal names and then they have a dark in front of them for the darker colors. So green plus you have been gifted a dragon egg. And then we have to return true because it successfully ran the command. Now now we can go into this on enable and now we have to register the command. So bucket.get plugin command and let's call it get dragon egg. And then let's we have to set the executor to the command executor. So new egg command. And so now it's getting the command and it's going to set the executor to this. Now we have to go to the plugin.yml and we have to add the command to the plugin.yml too. So commands, then put the name of the command. So we called it get dragon egg. We put that, new line, and we have a permission associated with it called first plugin give egg. So we can put permission first plugin dot get egg. There's also the usage. So how you actually use the plugin, we can specify that or use the command. And I usually just usage. So just a simple how you can use the command. So you don't need much there, but I typically make sure that there's at least one of there's at least something there. Normally it's the usage. I just put a usage. The usage actually gets called. So if you return false, the Spigot will send this text to the player. So that's where the usage comes in handy. Our thing never returns false, but just in case, you know, something happens. So now this is all working valid. We could put this in our server and it would work fine. But there's a couple of other things that we want to that we might want to change to make it a little bit better code. So the first thing is you might have noticed this player is sort of highlighted, and if we hover over it, it says variable can be replaced with a pattern variable. So if we do that, you'll see right here, it added the word player there, and now we have this variable down here. What this is doing is it's it's doing the same check of if the player is an instant, or if the sender is an instance of player. Um, but and it will also return true or false, but it's also creating a new variable called player in the same function. Or in the same sort of statement, it's also creating a variable player that only gets created if it returns true. Um, so since we can use this to make our code a little bit cleaner instead of having to do all that casting and whatnot. We removed an entire line of code and we only added one word. So it's a way to make your code a bit cleaner. Another thing we can do is we can actually move. You notice how this item is it's being created and then used and never used again. We can actually just get rid of it. We can get rid of the variable and just call it straight there. So that's just a couple things that we can do. The other thing is, you might have also noticed this is sort of underlined. We hover it over it, and then typically what you want to do is right here. So what it did is it added objects that required non-null. So let's say we forgot to add the get dragon egg to the plugin commands right there, or let's say we made a typo here or in here. When we try and get the command, it will return null, and you can think of null as nothing, not even the zero. You know, a zero still has a value of nothing. Null is just, there's not even a number to, like, there's nothing, it's just nothing. So we want to make sure that it's not returning nothing, because we have to actually run code, and if we try and run code on nothing, it's gonna throw an error. And you know, Spigot has some protection measures, but if it wasn't for Spigot's protection measures, our code would sort of crash and burn, and it would shut down the server, and not what you want. So that's why we add this require non-null. It will require that this is not null, and if it is null, it just won't. It'll it'll sort of not run this code, not run the code outside. It'll stop it from being run. So now we can, run that and copy and paste this file again, because now it's got the new code in it. Let's add it to the plugins, and yes, we want to override or replace. And now let's start up the server again. So as you can see, it's enabled. Now if we go and join the server, so we still have that message, but now get dragon egg right there. See, you've been gifted a dragon egg, and now we have a dragon egg. You can place it, you can, do whatever. So that's how you can create a command. And I think that's gonna be pretty much it for today. So um, again, if you need any help, just ask in questions or in the general, or just message me in Discord. But other than that, hopefully this uploads with a little bit better quality than the last one. And tomorrow we'll go over um, more player sort of uh, functions. So things you can do with players, like scoreboards, boss bars, um, sort of um, inventories, items, entities, and then other couple of things that you might need to know when you're doing Spigot plugins. And technically, tomorrow is gonna be the last day. But if you guys have anything else that you need or want me to go over, I can go over that. If you just sort of want to see how um, to make a plugin, a certain type of plugin, um, you know, just ask and I'll go over it on the either tomorrow or the day after or something like that. But unless any of that happens, unless you guys tell me that you want anything more, tomorrow will be the last day. So, thanks.